Good morning, Kahal Kadosh. Shavua Tov umevorach to everyone. Today, Tuesday, the 17th day of Sivan, the 9th day of June 2020. Today's class has been graciously sponsored by Miss Selene Razon, La'ilui Nishmat, her beloved grandparents, Avraham ben Haim and Rachel bat Vida. Iratzon that to the words of Torah will be an Elui Neshama for the grandparents, and Be'ezat Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, send her a suitable shidduch speedily, amen, to be able to build a beautiful home among Am Israel. Today's class will be discussing an interesting concept which we perhaps do it, and today Be'ezat Hashem will learn about it. What I'm referring to, as we know very well, the beginning of this week's Torah portion deals with the topic of the Menorah. The Menorah was the 7-branch candelabra, so to speak, that existed in the time of the Bet HaMikdash. The closest resemblance to that is the celebration of Hanukkah, with a couple of differences, and one of them is that Hanukkah is celebrated for 8 days instead of 7 days, but at the end of the day, the main concept of the celebration of Hanukkah is to relate about the miracle of the Menorah in the Bet HaMikdash. So in the Sephardic tradition, and perhaps in the Ashkenazic tradition, there is a concept of reading the chapter 67 of Tehillim in the shape of the Menorah. Now, I would like to say that all Sephardic Sidurim, they have more or less this type of design. Could be some in an angle according to some opinions, or in a semicircle, but everybody agrees that this is the idea of saying chapter 67, Lamnaseyah Benginot Mizmor Shir, to read it in the shape of the Menorah. This is found in a few places in the prayer book. Number one, in the Shacharit prayers, right before Baruch She'amar, you will say Hashem Melech, and then you have this Lamnaseach, or the drawing or the picture of the Menorah. Another time that we say the Lamnaseach, and preferably in the shape of the Menorah, is specifically during the time of Sefirat HaOmer, as we discussed for 7 weeks almost, that every night of the Omer connects to a different word of the Lamnaseach. So with this brief introduction, first I'd like to read from the Zohar some beautiful messages, and also would like to read from the different commentaries on the benefits that comes to the person of reading the Lamnaseach in the shape of the Menorah. I'll give you just a free sample that there is a added layer of protection that comes to the person's life by reading this chapter 67 of the book of Psalms in the form of the Menorah. Just follow with your fingers and follow with your eyes. And according to some opinions, this was actually the shield of King David, that when he went to war, he will have engraved this particular design, so to speak, in the shield of David HaMelech. It says also in the name of Rabbi Chaim Palachi and many other great giants that is a beautiful custom that the Kahal has a good omen of protection. They will create a parochet, a Torah ark cover, with this concept, with the shape of the Menorah, the way it's in the prayer book, and this is a good amulet, a good omen for protection to the person's life. I'll say the following. Obviously, to order a parochet, etc., may not be practical or easy or affordable. It comes with a price tag, but if a person at least makes the effort of reading this chapter 67 daily from the shape of the menorah, especially in our days that we are dealing with two challenges simultaneously, perhaps more than two, but I'm being kind today in the morning. Number one, the pandemic that's going on. Israel regretfully took a step back. Brazil cases are increasing tremendously. In New York, Baruch Hashem, the numbers seem to be going down. In Florida, regretfully, the numbers are coming up. So bottom line, we need to have and to activate, I should say, any kind of protection that is available for us, even in the simple format, which there is nothing simple about it, of reading a chapter 67 of Tehillim, especially in the shape of the menorah. But before we go to the actual design and shape of the menorah, let us concentrate a few moments explaining the Zohar of today, which is at the end of the day the first topic discussed in this week's Torah portion. But the topic of the menorah is not a new topic in the Torah. This topic was already discussed towards the second half of Sefer Shemot, when we talk about the Mishkan. And if the Kahal remembers, the shape of the menorah was one of the things that God needed to show Moshe Rabbeinu. Why? Because the menorah needed to be miksha ahat. The menorah needed to be hammered out from a solid piece of gold. So imagine yourself that all the little pieces that you see, the flowers and the almonds and the sockets and the branches and the cups and the bottom part of the cups, all were made out of gold, out of a single piece of gold. And every inch needed to be chiseled out manually. This is how the menorah was in the time of the Bet Hamikdash. So the Zohar Kadosh writes, and it says that the Zohar begins actually with a question. The Zohar asks, if we already discussed at length the topic of the menorah back in Sefer Shemot, which is when all of the vessels of the Mishkan were described and explained how to be done, etc., why is there a need to bring again the topic of the menorah? And it's true, if you look quickly at the beginning of the parasha, Be'alotecha et hanerot el mul penei hamenorah העלה יאירו שבעת הנרות, העלה נרותיה, ויעש כן אהרון אל מול פני המנורה, העלה נרותיה, כאשר ציווה השם את משה, בזה מעשה המנורה מקשה זהב, עד ירחד פרחה מקשה היא, כמראה, the way that God showed Moshe, כן עשה את המנורה. So in summary, this says what I told you before. So the Zohar Kadosh says, I don't understand. Why is there a need to repeat a commandment that chronologically has nothing to do with the parasha that we are reading? So comes the Zohar Kadosh and it explains as follows, that first, every one of the Nesi'im of Am Israel made an offering for the inauguration of the Mishkan. You know what Rashi says? Rashi says, what's the connection between the parasha of the menorah with the offering of the Nesi'im? So the Rashi explains that when Aharon saw that the Nesi'im, each one was called to make an offering, and Aharon was not invited to any offering whatsoever, Rashi tells us what was the feelings of Aharon HaKohen. Rashi says clearly, Halsha az da'ato. Suddenly, Aharon HaKohen, his mind became weak. He says, I don't understand. How come that no one from my Shevet Levi obviously, offered any kind of offering in the inauguration of the Mishkan? It's like, the teacher gives, there's 12 kids in the classroom, and he gives 11 gifts. One is going to stay without a gift. How do you think that that student without the gift will feel? Hamavdil, this is what Rashi says what happened with Aharon Kohen. Aharon Kohen says, I don't understand. Every tribe is getting the day of proclamation day, third day of the month, of the year. And what happened to us? Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God says to Aharon, Aharon, not to worry. Hayecha, God swears, Shelcha gedola mishelahem, your merit is greater than the merit of the Nesi'im. Why? She'ata madlik umetiv et hanerot. You're going to be in charge of lighting the menorah. And we'll discuss soon that you will have. Why? The korbanot, the Midrash Tanhuma explains that the korbanot were done outside of the Hechal, of the Ulam. There was an outdoor activity in the Mizbeach. Was a one-time chance for each of the tribes, because once the Mishkan or the Bet HaMikdash was inaugurated, so then the Kohanim and the Leviim mostly will be in charge. So God says to them, I'm giving you an upgrade. What is the upgrade? That the melacha of lighting the menorah is inside, is in the first class. The korbanot, it's premium economy. The menorah is first class. Why? Because you're right behind the pilot. You're right next to the Holy of Holies. So it doesn't get any better, God says to Aharon Kohen. But I recall many years ago that I read that the Aharon Kohen says, okay, God, this is fine. But as long as the Bet HaMikdash is alive, I'm able to do it. What about after the Bet HaMikdash has been destroyed? So the Bet Nishchai, I believe, I'm 95%, that he says that God says to Aharon not to worry. The candles of Hanukkah will be in lieu of the candles of the Menorah. And this is the Emet. Every year, irrelevant of where we are, we light the Hanukkah, remembering the miracle of the Menorah. And that is the concept of the Zohar Kadosh explains. And it says as follows, that we need to understand that only through someone like Aharon Kohen was able to the Menorah to be done accordingly. And that's why the Zohar Kadosh explains that Aharon Kohen, if we remember what we learned a while back during the class of the Pirkei Avot and during the time of the Omer, and we discuss weekly something about Aharon Kohen. Do you remember what was the power of Aharon Kohen? Ohev Shalom, Berodev Shalom. Aharon Kohen loved the peace. Aharon Kohen pursued the peace. And guess what? Like yesterday we mentioned that Hashem really doesn't like angry people, drunk people, etc. God loves peace. As we mentioned last week in Perashat Naso, God says, I'm willing to put my name on the line. Write the parchment, write the verse, mix it with water, and give it to the lady to drink. Why? God says, because if we don't do this procedure and we don't get some heavenly result immediately, what kind of life will the wife have with a husband that suspects her? And what kind of life the wife will have, and what kind of life the husband will have when he suspects his wife? So the Be'er Haim explained that both are going to suffer tremendously. So why suffer? There's no mitzvah to suffer. Even though we discussed in the past that many times suffering in a person's life, it's an atonement for their misdeeds. But in a suffering of this nature, that the husband suspects from the wife, and the wife dislikes the husband, what kind of harmony harmonious relationship this marriage will ever have. It's going to end up in a disaster and will not take that long. So God says, you know what? I'm willing to sacrifice that their disliking and animosity should be taken care of right away. And this is the way many people function in life. Some people, when they have a situation, a problem, a challenge, they deal with it immediately. And other people, what they do, they delay, they procrastinate it. Now, which one is it? Depends on the situation. There is no clear-cut answer. Sometimes waiting is the best solution. And sometimes taking care of it immediately, you can avoid the exposure and the expansion of fire of mahloket. So the Zohar Kadosh says that powerful weapon of shalom that Aharon Kohen had, it brought a tremendous amount of life and light into the world that was distributed to the actions and the miracle of the Hanukkah. Now, with that being said, there is one more message that the Zohar Kadosh explains. And let's see if we're going to mix and match now some information. First of all, the Zohar explains how the Jewish people travel. In the middle was the Mishkan, the tabernacle. There were Leviim families around it, to the four corners, north, south, east, and west. And outside the outer layer were the Shevatim, 3 tribes per side, 3 in the north, 3 in the south, 3 in the east, 3 in the west. Very nice. And the Zohar Kadosh explains that this is, in a way, the way that angels, Malachim, surround the presence of Hashem in Shamayim as well. Maybe this is a bit difficult for us to understand, but that's what the Zohar says. Not only that, in the Menorah, we have 7 branches. Remember when we discussed the Sefirot, these godly revelations in the world, wisdom, knowledge, understanding, those refers to the intellect, Rashi Tevot, Chabad, Chokhmah, Binah, Da'at. That's the acronym of the Chabad Lubavitch movement, obviously. I'm sure the Kahal knows this. But then we have the 7 emotional attributes of godliness. Kindness, justice, truthfulness, eternity, gratitude, foundation of holiness, and kingdom. So the Zohar explains that every branch of the Menorah, like we will say soon, that every branch of the Menorah represented a different day of the week, every branch of the Menorah represented a different element of connecting with God, like Abraham through Hesed, like Ishaq, Devora, etc. And the Zohar Kadosh writes, and it says, the great miracles that happened, how Moshe Rabbeinu actually did the Menorah, but the Zohar Kadosh explains that the Menorah was very close to the Shulchan and the Mizbeach Penimi. The Shulchan, the way it was, you have the curtain in the room. Behind the curtain was the Aron HaKodesh, the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKodashim. That's where the Kohen Gadol will enter once a year in the day of Yom Kippur and pray on the behalf of the entire Jewish people. Outside, that's called the Heichal, you can call it. You have the Menorah on one side, the Shulchan, the table that contained the 12 loaves of bread across, and in the middle, towards the entrance, it was the Mizbeach Penimi, the Mizbeach where the Kohen Gadol will do the Ketoret. In the beginning of the pandemic, we explained the power of the Ketoret, that reciting the Ketoret daily brings protection, salvation, and success to the person. The Ketoret, just to remind ourselves, was the incense, a combination of 11 special spices that the Kohen Gadol will do a ritual every day in the Bet HaMikdash. And it says the Zohar Kadosh that this performance of lighting the menorah and offering the ketoret, it brought a tremendous amount of blessing to Am Israel. But the Zohar adds in the name of Shlomo HaMelech, and it says, ketoret ba le'orer hasimcha bela'asor et hamagefa. Exactly what I said a minute ago, that the ketoret brings happiness, and the ketoret has the power to destroy any kind of plague. So as the Zohar Kadosh, my tama, why the mixture of 11 spices can deter a pandemic, a virus? And for those that have been attending our classes since the beginning of the pandemic, many of the kahal from before, but many perhaps joined us from the pandemic time, and many booklets and many readings were handed out. And if you remember, one of the things that we discussed at length was recite the ketoret, which is found in our daily prayers. According to our tradition, we say it once in the beginning of Shaharit, the second time at the end of Shaharit before Tana de Beliyahu Aleinu L'Shabeach, and in the afternoon we say it before the beginning, before Mincha rather. But the Zohar says that the ketoret, it brings a concept of unity. Why? Because what is the ketoret? The combination of 11 spices. And one of these two spices, I think was called the helbena or helbona, it has a very strong smell that by itself, people will not be able to stand the smell. But when we combine it with others, it changes. Maybe there is a message for us, like the ketoret brings unity among the spices. Maybe unity among Am Israel is mandatory. And the Zohar explains, ketoret, lashon kesher. The word ketoret, which means an offering of an incense, it's also in Hebrew the language of kesher. Kesher means connection, that we connect ourselves with one another. And it says the Zohar Kadosh, great is the merit of Am Israel, that by the kindness of the Almighty, some secrets are able to be shared with humanity, with society, to take advantage of the gift of prayer that we have. Before we go any further, time allowing, let's concentrate a bit on the actual concept of chapter 67 of Tehillim, Lamnaseach in the shape of the Menorah. I got a couple of sources here. Okay, that's source number one. Source number two. Source number three. As we say, B'Shem Hashem na'aseh v'nasliach. In the name of the Almighty we will do, and we will be successful. Allow me to begin with source number one. This is actually the source of a lot of the classes that we had through the Omer. And I discovered when I bought this Sefer that at the end of this book, it discusses a lot of the insights of this particular chapter. So we'll try to expedite the reading quickly so we are able to have a better understanding of the message of today. The Malbin rather, in this particular chapter of Tehillim 67, describes that this was established, this chapter of Tehillim, during the time of the famine that existed in the time of David HaMelech. And the Usfartem Lachem writes, and it says, if we will come to gather all the benefits written about this particular chapter, we will need a whole book by itself. But nevertheless, for the benefit of everyone, we'll give a summary of the benefits. So it says, number one, as I said earlier, David HaMelech used to carry this chapter of Tehillim engraved in his shield. And what was the purpose? What was the benefit rather? כשהיה יוצא למלחמה, when David HaMelech will go out to work, he will defeat the enemies. The Kabbalah writes, every person who makes the effort to recite this chapter 67 of Tehillim in the shape of the Menorah, he will find grace and positive thinking from the Almighty and from people. And as I said before, if it's engraved in the shape of the Menorah as a parochet, as a cover for the Hechal, which I believe I've seen it in Brooklyn, or somebody sent me a picture of it. I think it's Rabbi Mansour's class, or synagogue, I believe, the one on Ocean Parkway. I believe so. If not, in one of the synagogues in Brooklyn for sure. Not only that, it says that Borei Olam show David HaMelech this chapter in the shape of the Menorah, similarly to what he showed Moshe Rabbeinu. And that's why Hachamim say, every person who recites this chapter of Lamnaseach every day around the time of sunrise, he will be protected and is considered like if the person lead the Menorah in the Beit HaMikdash. Additionally, there are many explanations why this chapter of Tehillim was added after the counting of the Omer. But one of the answers is, if every week of the Omer, if every night of the Omer represents a Sephirah, and if every week of the Omer represents a different branch of the Sephirah, so every week of the Omer is connected to the Sephirot. First Paul, first Abraham, second Ishaq, third Yaakov, fourth Moshe, etc. Let's see if we are able to come up to this particular concept. Not only that, that if you look at the count of the words of Lamnaseach, Minginot, Mizmor Shir, we have altogether 49 words. Every word of the Lamnaseach, Minginot, Mizmor Shir, it's connected to a word, or to a day rather, of the Sefirat HaOmer. And here I have, again, the book in front of me, right here, okay, Lamnaseach, Elokim, all the way till Ares. Beautiful. Keeps even better. Okay, he explains more related to the Omer, but let's understand what is this. Number one, Lamnaseach Binginot Mizmor Shir, a song to Hashem. Basically, how a person is able to develop a connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it says, Lamnaseach Binginot Mizmor Shir, through the concept of singing. Singing, it elevates the mind. It's the sound of the neshama. So when we sing to Hashem, we praise Hashem, we are in the right track. Elokim Yahonenu Vibarechenu. Even though that you are the Almighty One that Elohim is the name of Hashem representing judgment, so to speak, still bless us and protect us. And the pasuk goes on describing all types of messages of connection with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why I'm going to turn now to the actual design of the menorah. We have a tradition that explains that every pole of the menorah represents a different day of the week. So we explain every word, it's one day of the Omer. 7 branches, Abraham, Isaac, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, David, so to speak. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Shabbat. This is the way in theory, but Kabbalistically speaking, it is not so. It's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Shabbat, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Shabbat is the word ismehu, happiness. This represents Moshe Rabbeinu, as we say in the Shabbat prayers. Ismach Moshe b'matenat helko. Ismach of ismehu. So this center branch is connected to Moshe Rabbeinu, which is the connector between Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, Yosef, Aharon, David, Shlomo, and all of the tzaddikim that preceded our generation. Now, not only that, the Et Ratzon explains that because this chapter of Tehillim has to do with the menorah in the Bet HaMikdash. What was the menorah in the Bet HaMikdash? Literally means means lighting the menorah. Imagine yourself, you come into your home, you come into your apartment at night, and all the lights are off. What do? You light the light. You turn on the light. Why you turn on the light? Because you want to see. Very good. So it says the Et Ratzon that if we understand that this chapter of Tehillim has to do with light, we need to remember that the light dissipates darkness. So it says in the Et Ratzon, and it says that when a person says this chapter of Tehillim, should make a personal prayer in their heart, in their mind, asking Hashem, God, allow your light to come in. Remove the darkness that may affect my life. And the darkness is not physical many times. It's spiritual or mental or emotional. And what do we say? Elokim yehonenu v'barechenu. May God favor us and bless us, and may He shine His countenance with us, Selah. Selah means forever. Now, what are we saying in this verse? God favor countenance upon me. What is this? It says very simple, that when a person activates their emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the darkness will start disappearing as well. Because a person sees godliness even when there is darkness. And continues, and it says, Lada'at ba'ares darkecha, literally means to make your ways known to the world. Bechol goim yeshuatecha, and your salvation among all the nations. What is this pasuk referring to? Mashiach's arrival. This verse talks about Mashiach's arrival. The Mashiach's arrival, as we discussed in the past, is not only to benefit Am Israel. Mashiach's arrival, Be'ezat Hashem, will benefit the entire world, including the Goyim, that perhaps today we have a distant relationship. And sadly enough, anti-Semitism seems to be on the rise, and we hope that stays down and Torah goes up. But it says, that the way that Yehudim, and this is my own way of seeing it, that perhaps this chapter of Tehillim is telling us that we must become a light into the nations. We need to learn and we need to make the effort of creating a Kiddush Hashem, of sanctifying God's names with the Goyim. And we mentioned yesterday in the English class of the Pirkei Avot that the Mishnah there mentioned one of the students of Rabban Yohanan ben Zakkai, correct, Rabbi Yoshua ben Hananiah. And what the Mishnah said about him, Ashrei Yolato, fortunate is the mother that gave birth to him. Now why, what about the father? Why only the mother? And what about the other Hachamim? We don't bless the other Hachamim, blessed be the mother that gave birth to him. It says that the mother of Rabbi Yoshua ben Hananiah used to come to the synagogue, sit behind the Mechitzah, and listen to the Kollel students learning Torah. And after she gave birth, she used to come every day to the Kollel, put the child behind the Mechitzah, so the child can grow, being a newborn, listening to Torah constantly. What was the outcome of Rabbi Yoshua ben Hananiah? That he was called, perhaps, Me'urav im haberiyot, one of the best people in Am Israel in his time that was able to interact with everyone. And his midot and his character trait was so pristine, was so beautiful, that people will say, I wish I can be like this rabbi. And we're not talking about the rabbi in the sense of knowledge, of awareness of Torah. No, we're talking about how polite, how respectful, how thoughtful was Rabbi Yoshua ben Hananiah. And in a way, that's what the Pasuk is trying to tell us, I believe. That we can be a light into the nations, in our behavior, in the way we conduct ourselves, etc. And he goes on with different explanations of this particular Pasuk, of these particular chapters, that at the end of the day, Mashiach will come. This is the bottom line. The bottom line is that Mashiach is coming. At what time, at what minute, at what day, I was not given that information yet. I hope that Borei Olam sends a universal message to all of us. There is no copyright in this concept. And Be'ezat Hashem, the Geulah will be here soon. I think that is the only thing that the world needs and can save the world. If you just put in perspective everything that's going on around, all over the world, all over the world. It's not only the United States, it's spilling over South America, Australia, Canada, Europe, etc. Anyways, so at the end of the day, what will be one of the benefits of Mashiach's arrival? First, peace in the world, which we don't have today. What else? All the added benefits. So it comes here, the Et Ratzon, and it says, Le'atid lavo. It says, when Mashiach will come, we're going to fulfill the beautiful pasuk that says, right in the middle, Ismehu biranenu le'umim. The nations will rejoice and sing. Ul'umim ba'aris tanhem sela. And you shall guide the kingdoms on the earth. That's what the pasuk says in our daily prayers. Behaya Hashem lemelech al kol haaretz. That one of the ultimate benefits of Mashiach's arrival is peace and harmony in the world, but the entire world recognizing the essence of God, which was the original master plan in the beginning of all. Then, regretfully, mankind came with the help of the Yetzer Hara and activated many matters that really became a source of headache for Am Israel till today, through different religions and anti-Semitism, etc. So bottom line, says the Et Ratzon, that will come a time that even Goim will develop a good relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Don't ask me which Goy will survive, how many of them will survive. I don't think that anyone has an answer to that. We hope that nobody dies, and we hope that everybody remains alive, and everybody recognizes Hashem's kingdom, and that alone will, let's call it, will reverse the personality of the person to the way that was originally intended for the person to be good, to be happy, to be positive, to be kind, to be generous, to be thoughtful. In other words, all the positives will become activated, and gradually, I will say, the negative character traits will start dissipating or disappearing from the spirit of the person. And Borei Olam will deal with all these matters accordingly, and it says that the land will become blessful and the land will come bountiful. That's why at the end the pasuk says, "Yevarechenu Elokim Eretz Natena Yebulah." The earth will give forth the Yebul, its yield, so to speak. "Yevarechenu Elokim Elohenu," and Hashem our God will bless us. And here it explains, it says that will be shefa, will be a great amount of abundance in the world. Yesh shefa, yesh shalom. It says, and when there is abundance of blessing, there is peace, as we found in the Mishnah in Oxin, the concept of peace, the ultimate blessing that Hashem has. And therefore it says, the Et Ratzon, that in this particular chapter of Tehillim, recited in the shape of the Menorah, it brings great protection and salvation to the person. Additionally, if you look through this chapter of Tehillim, we find something very interesting. What do we find? That Hashem's name Elokim is found in this chapter of 49 words 5 times. And what is the benefit of saying Hashem's name 5 times? It says, from a Kabbalistic perspective, is the sweetening of the judgment against the person. And therefore, a person that recites this chapter of Tehillim with great thoughts and concentration, not only develops a stronger connection with God, but that brings the person the forgiveness of their shortcoming throughout life. Now, I know that I may have gone a bit fast on this particular chapter of Tehillim, but the message was to reinforce what the Zohar Kadosh explains. Yes, this diagram, how complicated it may appear to be, this is one of the most powerful weapons that we have in our world of prayers. There are even explanations, what is the meaning of all these letters. I'll give you a free sample. Basically, this is the formation of letters at the end of each sentence, and they make up words and they make up codes. For example, this is the essence of godliness, the concept of praising God, the concept of charity, teshuvah, repentance, prayer, etc. And it says here quickly that Am Israel were given sodot. Sodot literally means secrets. In other words, for how many years many of us have been reading this chapter 67 of our daily prayer? I hope and pray that tomorrow morning, Be'ezat Hashem, or today in Mincha, before Aleinu Leshabeach, when we are going to recite this chapter of Tehillim, make the effort to read it in the shape of the Menorah, which, by the way, most Sidurim have it. And if your Sidur doesn't have it for Mincha in the shape of the Menorah, go and do it from the Shaharit part of the prayer book. It's not a problem at all. It's a chapter of Tehillim. There are many people who have this in a poster at home as a sign of protection. There are people that carry it in their wallet as a sign of protection and salvation. But even if you don't have none of the above, just read it and put in your mind, God, give me happiness, give me harmony, give me peace of life, of mind. Please bring Mashiach, to bring blessing and peace and financial stability to the world. Which at the end of the day, this was one of the things that he mentioned before, that when there is famine, there is war. Guess what? There is famine. Today, there is famine. Unemployment, 25%. You know what that means? 75 million people, Haz v'shalom, don't have income. You may say, Rabbi, relax, there is unemployment. I don't know where you are, but here in the state of Florida, there are over 2 million people that were not able to collect 1 cent because the computer system of the unemployment, it's crashing daily or hourly. I don't know the outcome. I don't know the solution. I know there were a couple of lawsuits already starting because of this. But what do you think it brings to the people? Put together quarantine, pandemic, restrictions, loss of income. What are you going to have? Rioting and looting. Even though you may say, but no, Rabbi, the rioting and looting became because a police officer killed in an aggressive way an African-American fellow. All that, we don't deny that it did happen, and we all agree that the actions was completely wrong. But that doesn't give society the permission of create havoc in the life of people, of destroying properties, of looting, of planting fear in the heart of mankind. And again, this topic can go on, but I think that the message of the Menorah today was a very powerful and a very deep message. So Yeh Ratzon that very soon we'll have the Bet HaMikdash, we'll have the Menorah, and we'll be able to ignite the Menorah. But in the meantime, remember Hanukkah, and I like to add the candles of Shabbat. The candles of Shabbat. Yes, I mentioned to you what Hanukkah Hen said to God. He said, God, that is good as long as the Bet HaMikdash is here. What about there is no Bet HaMikdash? Hanukkah. But Hanukkah is once a year. God says to Aaron, not to worry. Ladies will light the Hanukkah every day. Mehila. Ladies will light the candles of Shabbat every week in honor of Shabbat. And that's a reason, by the way. And I know that I have a class coming up in 20 minutes in Spanish. So I'm going to finish now, Be'ezat Hashem. Stay tuned. 10:30, clase en español. Be'ezat Hashem. But what was the reason why the candles of Shabbat were established to begin with? To the point that the Lacha says, if you only have money for wine or candle, buy the candle and don't do Kiddush on wine, do Kiddush on bread? Short answer, because the candles of Shabbat were established for Shalom Bait, to bring peace and blessing and harmony into the home. Do you remember who was the master teacher of Shalom? Aharon HaKohen. Dear Kahal Kadosh, thank you for watching, for listening. Once again, we'd like to express our gratitude to Miss Selene Razon for graciously sponsoring today's class, Le'ilui Nishmat, her beloved grandparents, Avraham Ben Haim and Rachel Bat Vida, Alehem Shalom. And we also pray to the Almighty that she should get a good shidduch and Be'ezat Hashem build a beautiful home among Am Israel. Amen. Shavua Tov u'Mevorach to everybody. Have a lovely day.